The war is not going well. Over the past 7 years, more sectors have gone dark. Every time these strange ships enter, it is only a matter of time before the sector just goes dark. It is though a wave reaches out and everything just goes black. Because of this, intel is spotty at best. They do get a few more images and recordings, but nothing that truly helps. It's like this species are just spirits that arrive to terrorize and take from them. They are now referred to as demons. On a recently recommissioned frigate, a fresh graduate of the Colbera Face Naval Officers Academy is trying to keep his ship operational. He received multiple denial for replacement parts, additional personnel, and clearance to dock in order to make simple repairs. The young captain knew why this was happening. It has been barely 9 months since his time of graduating from the academy. While he was in the academy, his fellow cadets made his life absolutely miserable as possible. They made a mess of his domicile and equipment right before inspection, deliberately breaking rules to get caught and blame it on him, even so far as to plant evidence to try and get him removed. The instructors were not helpful in this aspect as they pushed for the same result due to simple reasons. The reasons he was not born into a noble house. He has no notable bloodline. They all knew he was only allowed to attend solely on the word of the great supreme grand leader. Because of this, he is not worthy of a command in their eyes. The cadre would place him on contradicting details to get him in trouble and would use this as their primary weapon. That is until his 4th time standing before the commandant. The commandant could not remove him because the cadet still had the authority behind him as the great supreme grand leader. And the only option was to make him quit because anything else would bring the attention down on them, and they wanted to keep their establishment pure. The commandant berated him for well over an hour, trying to get him to just rage quit. That is until another instructor came in. The instructor arrived to make a complaint about the young snake missing his duty. He was surprised to see the young snake there and inquired on why he did not send a message stating that he would be late due to a meeting with the commandant. The young snake, nervous, informed the instructor that he had sent a certain individual to tell him. The instructor stopped and looked beyond annoyed. Not at the young snake, no, but for the other cadet that he had just told him that the young male snake was being unprofessional and was shirking his duties on purpose to focus on recreation. Understanding that a cadet had just lied straight to him and played him as a fool, the instructor verified the name of that slippery snake that had lied to him so blatantly. Hearing the name, the commandant immediately began to cover for the so-called slippery cadet. The slippery snake, of course, was a bit of an insult in their culture. The instructor realized what was going on as he thought about the name, and realizing that this was all politically driven, he and the commandant began to exchange words, and those words were not exactly church language, and it all culminated with the instructor yelling, "In case you forgot, we are losing." He paused to let that sink in. "We are losing because so many of you care more for your standing in the council than producing quality." The instructor then left the room with the young snake cadet in tow as he basically dragged him out of there. Several instructors had already lost family in the war against the so-called demons, and they were just tired of losing, period. It was not in their nature to lose, and they did not enjoy the sensation. This has made many of them question the status quo. From that point on, life only got marginally better. Some instructors still tried to harass him in class, of course, mainly by asking questions that were well above his own level. Cadets still tried to set him up for failure, but they ended up getting too brash. They ended up getting caught by the instructors, and the instructors had had enough of the BS. Trying to get out of punishment, they would use their family name or worse. Failing that, they jumped from the frying pan directly into the burn pit. Blackmail and bribery pushed the instructors to the point of recording everything that was there. Then the recordings and reports would be sent above the commandant's head as well as to the cadet's family. A few cadets were immediately removed to make sure that the families were not embarrassed. The remainder blamed the young snake cadet for everything, claiming that if he simply left the academy, everything would have been fine. Their friends wouldn't have left, and they would not be in trouble. Because of the resentment, the cycle just continued, just at a lower rate. Upon graduating, he was given the ship he was promised, though when he saw his new ship, a recommissioned frigate that was very, very poorly maintained, he only had one thought in his mind: I'm going to need a tetanus shot just from looking at this damn thing. No matter how many times he asked for assistance, it was always denied. Eventually left to salvage parts with his crew of misfits, problem children, and so on. After only a month of space-time, the captain pulled the crew together in order to talk to him. This was difficult as most of the crew just didn't like each other, period. He gathered them all in the main room, and to pay attention to him, he picked up a large piece of metal and beat it against a pipe and a bulkhead, then throwing it into the crowd just to get their attention. Then he began to explain everything. You all know why you're here. This ship is being used to throw everyone that is an issue into the trash receptacle. I want to let you know you are not alone. I was sent to officer training because I dared to make sure that the great High Grand Leader received information on the demons themselves. He paused and let that stew for a moment. I'm sure that many in the chain of command want nothing more than to look down on all of us. Why? Because we will not lower ourselves and lick their hemipenes. The crown chuckled at the implication of what he just said. I am not like them. If you can show that you are great at what you do, you'll receive nothing but respect from me. The same respect as anyone on the council. As of now, I'm going to give my first official order to the entire crew. We will salvage what we need, take what we must, and turn this ship into the best warship possible. One that will make the great High Grand Leader jealous. To that end, use any connection you have, any knowledge you can amass, even any rumor that will make this ship the pride of the fleet. Why should we do this? Because this is not my ship. I may be in command, and I have to deal with all the refuse exit smooching officers. But this ship is yours. He pointed to everyone when he said this. It belongs to the snake you are. The snake to your left and to your right. This is where we will succeed where others fail. This is where we show the rest of those self-righteous idiots that we will succeed. They want us to perish for their glory. I say, we live out of spite. The crowd at this point is cheering for the captain, as they all shared the same sentiment. From that moment on, they took the frigate to the boneyard, and they began to get to work. The frigate did not have a designation, as it had been removed while kept in the boneyard. Not only the name, but the numbers as well. For now, the ship will simply have no name, as they scoured the area for parts. This frigate used to be a torpedo frigate, designed to fire a few dozen torpedoes at a target before retreating. Originally, it housed 7 tube stations with a single launcher apiece. Each tube was outfitted with a magazine of 18. The crew knew this was not enough for them and added 2 more stations and made every station a dual launcher with magazine capacities of 24 for each tube. That meant 48 per station. These will be complemented by the point defense cannons that jumped in number from 14 to 27, along with an additional 2, which makes 4, direct fire cannons, turreted of course. With all the modifications, within 2 years, it didn't even look like the frigate it was anymore. More like a very, very angry light cruiser. Soon after this, they began to be sent on reconnaissance missions alone, normally with very little intel. Though the ship was action packed with issues, not only mechanical, electronical, but God knows how much, the crew kept her functioning. This strange patchwork ship was laughed at for years, and due to the fact that it was only sent out on simple reconnaissance missions, it never had a chance to truly prove its mettle, at least not for another 4.5 to 5 years. By then, it had been 7 years since the house fleets were lost. By this point, another sector or two had gone dark. Even the great high grand leader could not sit on his coils and wait for this menace to simply envelop his entire empire. In a surprise act, he asked for volunteers from each house. Every house would send a total of 3 ships, creating a fleet of nearly 100 ships, and each of them were willing to face off against the demons in the dark. To everyone's surprise, a strange patchwork ship arrived to join them, though many captains told the ship to leave, saying things like, "This is beyond the capabilities of a group of useless eaters like you," which was an extremely major insult in their culture. In fact, there's not one that's ever stronger. The commander of the fleet did not insult the ship or crew. He remembered training the captain of that ship back in the academy. After some final checks, it was time for the fleet to jump. It only takes a few moments for all ships to jump right after each other. And as they jump, the power output is absolutely immense. On a patchwork ship, this usually causes issues. And this day was absolutely no different. Coming out of the jump, the patchwork ship was just blaring warning lights as they were going off as several systems began to either overload, overheat, or shut down completely. The crew immediately got to work as they arrive on the edge of the system. As they try to repair things real quick, they can still see out, and they can see so much more activity in the system than there should be happening in a dark system. Near the colony worlds, large ships are in orbit. These unknown ships seem to be preparing for an invasion of the planet. Above the planet are dozens of Columbus ships. They're either adrift, currently being boarded, tumbling into a gravity well, currently being drug into the atmosphere as they burn into tiny, tiny little atmospheric pieces. Around the 5 stations is completely dark. Yet looking close, you could see those same strange ships are docking with the stations. That was odd because the automated defenses should have activated. The entire reactor core could have gone down and the system should still function, but absolutely nothing. The guns were silent. The strange ships that they looked at were zoomed in on, and they got in as close as they could. The strange ships were just covered in weapons. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was that the ships were turning straight towards the fleet. As they did, the patchwork ship didn't need any reason to sound general quarters, and they got ready for the assault. But as they did, something strange happened. The entire attack fleet just suddenly went into disarray. The captain and his crew watched as ships went dark. They went adrift. They depressurized. Some of them misfired weapons and, horrifyingly, sometimes into each other. Engines and thrusters misfired, causing massive acceleration or deceleration, or simply spinning the ship out of control. Or, worst case, it simply exploded. The captain started screaming to the comms officer, "Get me the Admiral now!" "I can't, sir. The quick jump fried our comms. We can't talk to anyone, and we can't even receive either." Taking a moment to assess the situation, "Push us along the side the flagship. We need to evacuate the crew." Without hesitation, the helmsman maneuvered through the absolute chaos that was happening outside the ship. Thankfully, the flagship simply went dark and was still drifting at the same speed. The patchwork ship moved up to the main cargo hold and attached to the hull, which was rather violent, shaking both ships as the sudden change in mass nearly ripped the docking clamps off. Immediately, they began the process of cutting their way into the ship. The process became much easier once the locking mechanism was severed. Opening the door, the crew were nearly killed. The flagship crew were actually prepared to face the demons in hand-to-hand combat, and before they actually struck into the crew, they suddenly saw the faces of the patchwork ship crew telling them to start boarding and loading supplies. Since the patchwork ship still had power and tools, they began the long process of opening every door and hatch to get the crew out. On the bridge of the flagship, the captain was so close to dying from asphyxiation that the door being ripped open was a true blessing in his eyes. The young captain came in immediately and saluted. "I know a captain is supposed to go down with his ship, but not today, sir." It took a long time to actually clear the entire ship and rescue as much of the crew as possible. A messenger came in screaming into the bridge as they were still trying to get the systems back online. "The enemy forces are approaching, sir." Getting to the bridge as fast as they could, they look at the radar and everyone's eyes get wide. How long? That's all he was thinking. The captain got on the PA system. "Attention all personnel. The enemy's approaching. You have 4 minutes to get on board before we detach from the flagship. This is no joke. You better haul ass." There's suddenly a massive rush into the patchwork ship, so much so that the ship actually shakes as the crew members come in a huge wave. On the bridge, the admiral says, "We don't have enough time. Detach now, and we may have a chance to jump." "With all due respect, sir, this is my ship. So sit down, shut up, and watch my crew work." The admiral was surprised at the outburst, but actually did as he was told. "Helm, maneuver us so that the flagship is between the enemy and us." When doing so, the sound of metal straining echoed through both ships. With care and precision, the ships are moved into place. Those inside are pushed around due to the movement of the ships, but that didn't stop them from rushing into the patchwork ship. "Gunnery stations, stand by until I give the order to fire. Remember your training, and don't get trigger happy." The admiral watched as this band of degenerates and criminals and misfits worked with unparalleled efficiency. Before the 4 minutes were up, the personnel director yelled, "All personnel accounted for, sir." "Confirmed?" "Yes, sir." "Detach and maneuver us towards the end of the sector, but don't move, just turn us." He then gets on the PA again. "All personnel, prepare for high G maneuvers," which is a nice way of saying, find something solid, hold the fuck on, this is going to hurt. The radar can see multiple small vessels on approach at the angle the patchwork ship is facing. Once they accelerate, they only have a few seconds before they're exposed. The captain gives the order to go, and everyone feels the sudden G-forces as they're thrown back. It only takes a few seconds of thrust, but they need the distance as far as possible because they don't even know what they're facing at this point. Once direct line of sight is accomplished, the approaching ships instantly focus on it and prepare to engage. The corvettes and frigates approaching immediately deploy their drones. These strange cross-shaped machines can maneuver accelerate far faster than any piloted craft. Seeing this, the young captain gave the orders. Torpedo stations, engage the larger vessels. Gunnery stations, target the smaller craft. This is when the modifications would truly show their worth. A standard torpedo launcher fires every 31 seconds. Double tubes means you can fire away basically every 15 to 16 seconds. With the extended magazine, this one ship pumped out torpedoes easily 3 to 4 times faster than a standard frigate should. The sudden burst of fire surprised the human ships that were approaching and they broke formation. The ballistic cannon rounds from the patchwork ship are not enough to destroy a frigate, but they can cripple a corvette if they hit the engine or the bridge. The mass of torpedoes was a big surprise, but nothing the point defenses couldn't handle, with the exception of the very first torpedoes coming in. As it turns out, due to the patchwork ship worrying about misfiring, the first torpedoes in every tube was a solid head core usually used for training. It has just enough to puncture a hole, but without any type of explosion to cause additional damage, it would just rattle the holy crap out of the crew as it simply knocked the ship God knows how many meters sideways from the impact. In addition, when the solid torpedoes are shot, being solid, there's nothing to detonate. So, something solid as basically a piece of metal with a thruster on it, it's just going to smile at you and keep coming. This caused half of the human ships to stop firing for a few moments as they were trying to reposition themselves and figure out what the hell just hit me. Not wanting to waste any precious moments, the patchwork ship just kept accelerating. The drones would not stop unless a torpedo destroyed them or point defenses cut them apart. Seeing this, the human ships stopped playing. At 36 seconds away from the enemy, meaning if they use their main guns, 36 seconds from time of launch to time of impact. Aboard the human ships, they began to prepare their mass driver cannons. These coil guns were usually fixed and have a reload time of 11 seconds. Before firing, any ship would have to build up a large amount of energy. On board the patchwork ship, the comms officer, energy spike! Evasive maneuvers! An order that didn't actually need to be given. As soon as the coil guns fired, the patchwork ship lurched to avoid it. This sent several of the crew, including the captains, flying into the bulkhead. The projectile would then rip past them, and the process would repeat as each shot was fired. The humans could calculate the patchwork ship was nearly clear enough of any gravity well or electronic interference to jump, so the humans decided to send everything at them. Soon, torpedoes from the patchwork ship were not sent at the human ship, but instead to intercept human torpedo. The helmsman on the patchwork ship kept moving the ship so sporadically that crew members were beginning to get sick, defecate uncontrollably, and that was on top of getting thrown around, sometimes landing in their own waste. The patchwork ship shook violently as one of the coil gun rounds glanced off the side of the ship. Alarms flashed and alarms blared at each other. The readout on the captain's console showed damage to one of the guns. Sir, gun 4! It's gone, sir! The helmsman, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. You forget about that one. You're keeping us alive now. Keep doing well. Do what you're doing. Navigations, can we jump yet?
7 seconds, sir.
Jump as soon as you can. Don't wait for me. Then the ship lurched again in order to dodge an incoming coil gun round. Then 3 seconds later, the ship was no longer in the sector. From the humans' vantage point, when they saw the torpedo station get blown off, they expected a surrender. Seeing the launcher, ammo, and even some personnel vented into space, they all kept lining up their shots just in case these guys decide to get froggy and jump. often seeing the ship move again every time they fired. They could see the hull begin to buckle under stress. Then it jumped. Every human that saw it said the same thing. Fuck. Hearing the news of his ship escaping, the admiral and general said to each other, "Well, I guess we have to do things the hard way now." Inside Columbra territory, a single beaten ship emerges. As it lurches from the jump, the young captain yells, "Status! I need a damage report. Navigations. Are we inside friendly territory?" "Yes, sir." "Does the emergency retrieval beacon still work?" Uh, yes, sir, it does, yes." "Good, send a signal." He then looks over at the admiral, who is beaten and broken from being tossed around the bridge area. "I hope your dress uniform wasn't on your ship, sir. We're going to be briefing the great high grand leader soon." With that, the admiral said, "Provided we can get to a port before this ship takes any more damage." Smiling, the young commander says, "When we got this ship, it was held together with little bits of wire and good intentions. Trust me, sir, my crew is far from ready to fail now." Back on Earth, a young lady is upset with the message she just received. Her mate, if you want to call him that, will not have time to visit again. Though she's upset about it, she's even more upset that her children will be unable to see their daddy again. As she goes into the next room, she can see Susan's child playing with her children. When the young lady explains the situation, Susan comforts her as she is not alone in this situation. Her children are old enough to understand what's going on, even though they don't like it. The young lady looks and thinks how much the kids look like their father. Thankfully, he did send a recorded message for them to watch. And as she watched, she realized that something big must have happened from the look on his face and the tone. Also, he never misses a chance to come home. What happened out there? Around the facility and around the new colonies, a message went out to every single reptile out there. It was in the straight Columbra language. It was a simple message, and one they had waited for a long time. It simply said, "The time has come for you to go home."